Hello everyone, welcome to CyberScoop TV. Greg Otto, your managing editor here. We're coming to you from the floor of the 2018 RSA conference, and I'm talking with Eric Cornelius, the VP of Innovation for Cylance. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, your expertise falls in ICS, and we've been seeing a lot around ICS in the news lately, whether it's Crash Destroyer or what's been going on with Trisis. Kind of talk to me on how you're seeing these threats come alive and evolve.
Sure, so I think in recent years, ICS has become a more interesting target for a number of reasons. One, because it's sort of the nexus between the physical and the cyber world. So it's one of the rare areas where we can have an actual physical consequence as a result of a cyber attack. So it's a pretty attractive threat landscape for attackers.
So I know with those enterprises, and when you're talking about the industrial internet, there's this conversation around IT versus OT. Can you kind of talk about how that works and how that plays into how these enterprises are protecting themselves?
Sure, so IT versus OT is an interesting concept, not only as a term, meaning two different cultures kind of coming together, but in two different design paradigms that have resulted in what was historically a lack of connectivity in the OT world, the operational technology world, that has now recently become more interconnected with the traditional IT world. Well, with those advances in technology that has really been a boon for the OT space, what has ended up happening is we've brought a lot of the vulnerabilities from the IT world into the OT environment. Unfortunately, the culture of security was not brought with it, and so now we sort of are having this clash of the cultures, if you will, to try and adopt modern security practices into these OT environments where there's this really high potential for loss of revenue due to downtime, and so there's a natural fear of security technologies in the OT environment, so therefore they're kind of slow to adopt them.
So how can we sort of change the culture around that, and do you have any advice for moving into a culture where there's this sort of kumbaya working relationship where everything is good and everything can be secure?
Sure. So I've been working on that particular problem for almost 15 years now.
Okay.
Education, education, education. I always tell my clients in the ICS environment, if I had $10 to spend on cybersecurity, I'd spend $8 on training my people. At the end of the day, you don't have any malicious intent on behalf of the operators, you have a lack of understanding. And so what needs to happen is the IT guy and the OT guy needs to take a little bit of time, establish common ground, understand that they're each being outcome-based, but that they're being measured on different outcomes. Everyone ultimately will come to realize through enough education that a secure process is a better process in almost every single way. And it's just helping people to understand that there is a path to get there that's not detrimental to the operating environment.
So with these companies that are guarding the industrial internet, they're guarding critical infrastructure, which means they're working with the government pretty regularly. We hear a lot about public-private partnerships, so I'm wondering if these critical infrastructure sectors really set the course for how public-private partnerships should look, or what lessons can be learned for the way that these companies are dealing with the government?
Sure, so the idea of the public-private partnership is an interesting one because let's go back to ICS in general, is very interesting from a national security perspective because it's one of the only areas of high national security vulnerability that is outside the purview of the government, which is to say that short of regulation, there's no way for the government to take any sort of defensive action, and that is because most of the industrial control systems in the world are privately owned. So hence the public-private partnership, where the government tries to be the thought leader, perform the research, help private industry understand what types of actions they should be taking, and then through education campaigns, through training, they try and drive adoption of those practices. The other extreme of that is regulation, and you're seeing that in the electrical sector, right? Which some people kind of refer to as the critical infrastructure sector, if you will, because it touches us all so closely.
Right.
And it's one of the most heavily regulated, with fines being put in place by NERC-CIP of up to $1 million a day per violation. So that's on the extreme end, which makes the private sector hesitant to engage with the public sector. So it's this really delicate balance of trying to drive thought leadership on behalf of the government and get it into and adopted by the private sector.
Great. Eric, appreciate your perspective. Thanks for joining us for a little bit today.
Thanks for having me.
For all of our videos, check out our YouTube channel, and for more on ICS and all things cybersecurity, check out cyberscoop.com. I'm Greg Otto. Thanks for watching.